This is the Daily Divider show where we pick a story from each day and give you my take. Let's get into it. On Monday, Chris Bishop is under fire for pulling $27 million out of a housing infrastructure fund to pay for a walking cycling bridge in his own electorate, a move officials warned against and one that appears to breach cabinet manual guidance. With transport funding for bike and pedestrian project gutted, Bishop tapped Kainga Order money meant for stormwater upgrades and housing development. He calls it pragmatic. Labour calls it self-serving, a conflict of interest, and a raid on housing funds to cover a transport policy hole. Okay, I don't think what Chris Bishop did is corruption per se, but it definitely is perceived to be as such. I mean, when you shift $27 million from something that is supposed to help to build housing, something that you guys in the government, in the Nats, have been lacking very much so in the past term, and shifted to a bridge that, a cycling and walking bridge, and a mode of transportation that you have been, I mean, to put it mildly, toxic towards. It definitely seems a bit shady. The perception is a little bit of a corruption is unfolding there. But I should have to say, and the segment opener hasn't necessarily covered that. The local council in the area definitely did request the funds to be reallocated, particularly because they realised or they redid the math on how much it would cost for those stormwater works to be implemented, which I think is a bit suspicious, considering that a lot of things go over budget, tend to, and you want a bit of grace period to bit of margin of error to just make sure of that. And also cost cutting and cutting corners is a bit shady considering what we're talking about when it comes to building new housing. And also the argument in the article with the Post is that there's also a possibility that the bridge could go over budget, and then you've got two projects going over budget that's not being properly funded, which is awesome. But the main one is it's just a bit shady, isn't it? I mean, no, he's right. It is a bit pragmatic. But when you're the Minister of Transport, I believe this is what it comes under. But when you're the minister in the area, and then at the same time you're the MP, I think it's due unto yourself to remove yourself from that conflict of interest. Because that perception does seem very, very, very shady, and it might not be the case. It might come to pass that, it works out for everybody. But it would have been better if you had the funding for the bridge in the first place, and then you would have spare funding when it comes to stormworks, although I would rather not see cost-cutting for building new dwellings. But that's just me. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Christopher Luxon is doubling down on New Zealand's record-high prison population, calling it a good thing and the cost of restoring law and order, even as the government falls behind on its promises of 500 new police. While the prison muster surges past 11,000, Labour calls it a warning sign, and officials admit police target is slipping into 2026. The government says it won't apologise. The bill and the delays will be what they will be. Look, I've said it when it comes to defence spending, and I'll say it when it comes to this. I'm not one of those hippies that believes that we should completely get rid of prisons. Prison abolition, I just think, is a naive move. But I do believe in reforming the system to emphasise more towards rehabilitation, because the majority of offenders can be rehabilitated. I don't know the exact figure, but it's a very, very, very small minority of your Brendan Tarrants and your excessive offenders that need to be in the system, and we need to fork money over. But it just costs. But it costs so much. That's the other thing. It costs so much money per person to keep into prison when you don't actually need them to be in prison. The only reason why they might be repeatedly offending is because of the conditions that were set upon them, which is true. That's absolutely true. I still don't think we should get rid of prisons, because I just think it's just a really stupid move, because you're still going to have some really fucked up people that you can't rehabilitate. So the idea, and it's the same principle when it comes to it's the same principle as moving homeless away from Queen Street in Auckland. You're just moving the problem away. It's the same as this. You're just moving the mental health issues, the people, the issues, people reoffending away in a box, so you don't have to look at them or deal with them and spend a fortune per person on them being there. That's unnecessary. And the other thing is that I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was Mark Mitchell or Casey Costello said that they would resign when they didn't meet their 500 target. They keep pushing it back, so I guess they'll keep pushing it back to the election when they'll get booted out anyway. But yeah, obviously an increase in the prison population isn't good for our economy and isn't good for just our social cohesion as a country. You're creating a class of people that will continuously and it's majority Pākehā, sorry, that was a complete misspoke. It's majority Māori and majority Pacifica. It's majority minorities that will be in that loop, and that will reinforce in that idea of organised crime, and that's bad. I mean, I guess I have to say that that's bad. We don't like that. I mean, I don't like that. I don't know about the National Party because they seem really keen to create that culture so they can, I guess, win more elections. So that's probably a good long-term game to have. And on Wednesday, the government is trumpeting the end of emergency housing motels in Rotorua, but Labour says it's just pushed homelessness out onto the streets. Ministers called Rotorua a poster child of a broken system now fixed, while critics argue the closures simply lock people out of support as waiting lists grow, funding shrinks and rough sleeping spikes to the worst in living memory. Ah, yes, another example of the National Party or the government moving the problem away where they can't see it. I mean, this has been true. This is not just true in Rotorua. This is true in just the whole country. The fact that they are touting and so proud of moving thousands of people off the state housing list. Where have they gone? Or moving thousands of people off emergency housing in this instance. And where have they gone? Won't tell you. Oh, well, we've got a couple of hundred into new housing. Cool, but thousands have been kicked off. Well, you know, it's one of those things. That's it. Seriously, that's it. Again, I don't have to emphasize this. They don't care about you. It's an attitude to see a line go down on a graph and then present it to Middle New Zealand and say, "There, look, line is going down," when it's not beneficial to you in Middle New Zealand or anybody, because it has a higher impact on the economy and you see more people on the streets. I don't like seeing more people on the streets. I want to see them in housings. But I do recognise the fact that when people are on the street, there is a more likelihood of them going into crime. And petty theft definitely will rise. And it just has in general a bigger strain on the economy. That's just a hardline fact. You would much rather invest millions, hundreds of millions into housing, getting people into houses, getting people roof under their heads, and for the temporary time, for the short, medium term, getting people into emergency housing. That was one of the benefits of COVID, if there was any, in this country. The fact that the Labour government, the Labour-led government, looked at the problem and went, right, we've got homeless people on the streets. They could spread COVID. What do? We need to curb that. How about we put them into temporary emergency housing, give them a roof over their heads, give them some dignity, and on top of that, prevents any spread of the virus. Win-win. Now, obviously, what led on to that is a benefit of just having people off the streets is more beneficial to the country than seeing them on the streets. And yes, there's a lot of money. Sure, it's not a long-term solution. It's an intermediate. And of course, there was some feedback. There was some a knockback that people were staying in motels a bit too longer than anticipated. That's because of our infrastructure wasn't there for building state houses and housing in general. Look, we're just going back to what it was under Jonke, because this was the same issue under Jonke. That whole I remember like it was yesterday. I remember seeing on the news as a little baby, It was one of the big talking points in the 2017 election was the fact that rough sleepers was people sleeping in their cars, and National would refuse to admit that because they're sleeping in their cars, so you can't see them. So it's fine. It's not a big issue. It was a big issue then because under National they don't care. They just don't care, and you're seeing that now. But even worse. And on Thursday, the government says it finally cracked the Cook Strait Ferry saga, unveiling a cheaper, stripped-back $1.86 billion plan that Winston Peters claims saves taxpayers $2.3 billion. 2 new Chinese-built ferries will arrive in 2029 with old port infrastructure reused to avoid big blowouts that sank Labour's IREX mega project. But critics say Peters is spinning sunk costs, buying smaller ships for more money, and glossing over security questions around contracting a state-linked Chinese shipyard. I mean, what a catastrophe! At least they found their boats. I mean, right? I mean, the budget's supposed to be 1.86 billion. Taxpayers will pay 1.7 billion. It will not pass 2 billion. Keyword not. It will not. It will not pass 2 billion. Why would it? Oh wait, no. There's 600 million sunk costs for the IREX ferries. So it's actually 2.6 billion is the guaranteed cost right now. And in the press conference, Winston keeps chirping up about $2.3 billion saved. $2.3 billion, and that's referring to the $4 billion blowout that it should have gone to if IREX was kept in. Now, if you don't know, or you already know, or if you've forgotten, that $4 billion figure comes from a Treasury paper in July 2023 citing a benchmarking of a dataset of 16,000 projects around the world. And those quoted words in the report consist of this. Based on international benchmarking, the mean project cost overrun for similar projects is 32%, already exceeded by IREX. And the mean cost overrun of projects with over 50% overrun is 183%. On this evidence, the total cost IREX could approach $4 billion, or 4,000 million. Now, I don't really need to tell you what the issue can come across when it comes to mean, right? If you've got a couple of huge outliers in that data set, one project, I don't know, like the Tasmanian project, which I'm not sure if that's included in this data set, but that is an example, could completely stretch out the average for the other projects. So that's one thing. But essentially, what this means is that this is a worst case scenario of what the project could run into. That's it. This is where it would have went to. It's what it could have went to. It's what it could have went to if it went further over budget. That was the worst case scenario. And it was really fun. It was really funny that that announcement came across, that you say $2.3 billion, and that the $4 billion figure comes from some random study that only depicts the worst case scenario. It wasn't a guaranteed figure. Now, pray tell, what tunnel in Wellington are we building that will cost, at the maximum of their own calculations, $3.8 billion? Now, how much do you want to bet that thick tunnel will go over budget? 4.5 perhaps? Now, who will be chirping up about going over budget? Will it be Winston? Will it be Nicola Willis? No, of course not, because it's their own team doing it. But I just wanted to highlight it on the day, I think it was the announcement afterwards, for the fact that this was such a pivotal infrastructure project that we then delayed another few years to 2029 for their own political gain. It was complete economic sabotage from these guys, because they wanted to stamp their own. For Winston, I'm sure he wanted to stamp his own identity on it because he's salty that he lost. He went out of Parliament, and for National, it was just a knee-jerk reaction because it was a good campaigning method. I mean, they could have. I can't emphasize enough. I'm pretty sure I said this in a video ages ago, must have been last year, that they could have kept this in and then touted we did it. I mean, they kind of effectively did that with the city rail link, but they could have done it with this. They could have said, oh, we capped costs and stuff. It would have been lies, but they could have done that. They didn't. It is complete incompetence. It's complete blatant incompetence, and now we will have to settle with crappy, shitty ferries, decaying, rusting boats for another few years until 2029. And you know what? The funny thing on top of that, I haven't even mentioned, the contract hasn't even been signed. It'll probably be signed when Winston goes over to Guangzhou. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but I tried. It hasn't even been signed. So all this chirping up, we haven't even had a guaranteed figure. That's not even a guaranteed figure. That $2.6 billion, $2.5 billion, because I am including that sunk cost. It's not 1.86, and it's not. It's 2.5. That 2.5 billion figure that's going to cost the country. It's not even guaranteed. And how much you want to bet that's going to go over budget? 3 billion, perhaps, or maybe 10 billion. 10 billion, and of course, I'll say more onto it. The last thing is that how much you want to bet. How much money are they going to shift to the local councils and the ports for port work costs? Because yes, they've allocated a few $100 million, but a lot of that cost blowout was in those port works was because of earthquake strengthening. Where's that money going to come from? If it is going to come from anywhere. Look, it's just another example of a national-led government cutting corners, like always, and then Labour having to come in, pick up the pieces, and then start anew. They just create their own problems for themselves. It's so annoying. I could go on and on about my frustration with that party. They just create more problems. They completely kneecap themselves. Look, Labour's not perfect. Labour's not perfect at all. You've got some really annoying people. But the overall consensus is that Labour is for you and National is for big business. And on Friday, the government has quietly binned advice to toughen New Zealand's climate goals, rejecting a push for more ambitious net negative 2050 target and sticking with the old net zero plan. Critics say the move was buried in fine print, while ministers also watered down methane cuts despite warnings that climate impacts are arriving faster and hitting harder. Climate experts call the decision incredibly consequential, accusing the government of downplaying their science and dodging transparency. It reminds me of that time, I believe it was last year, must have been late or mid to late 2024. I think it was off the coast of Taranaki. There was offshore wind farms being were going to be built. That were started under Labour. Now, of course, when National came in, they completely binned that and opened the door up to deep to seabed mining. And then, I don't really need to tell you this, but I guess I might if you need me to. The national-led government is not going to be for fighting the climate crisis. Just, I don't know, shocker. If you voted for the National Party and the Green Party, you might be shocked, but that's just not going to happen. What is there really to say, really? You've got other countries like Australia right next to us who are taking advantage of the opportunity that climate change and shifting the energy grid is bringing them, all the while we've got a national-led government that just wants to keep repeating the same mistakes of the past and tap into resources that we are very much dwindling in and not tapping into the resource that we have in abundance in renewables, especially when it comes to wind. Offshore wind would be a bloody godsend for this country, and the fact that they look, yeah, I digress on that one, and it's because they're bored. They are bored from fossil fuel companies and the like, and they're not keen on creating more industry, more productivity, and building better infrastructure. Because if they were, they would be much more open to tapping into new technology when it comes to for renewable energy, like offshore wind. And this is just another example of the fact that they are just softening not completely getting rid of net zero, but just making it irrelevant and completely handcapping the next Labour government. And this is one of the things that I think will be very interesting to see if Labour gets into government next year. If will be to see how people react in those 3 years, because that 3-year period is going to very much be picking up the pieces. Especially in that first year, they're going to be reverting a lot of things, like getting rid of the regulatory standards bill, for an example, and possibly binning charter schools. Although I'm not sure if that would be an immediate thing or a gradual, slow process when it comes to that. It will be a slog, and I'm really interested to see how people are going to, especially when it comes to people who are more climate-minded, how they are going to react to that slow progress, because it is going to be a bit of a slog in the first years. Yeah, they've got a lot to do if they win. Honestly, I don't envy them. I do not envy them. And lastly, lastly, there was nothing on Saturday, which is really, really weird. I'm sure there was probably an opinion piece that I completely missed, but there was a policy, a campaign policy that the National Party released that made me think, and made me look and go, not bad. So the National Party, if you don't know, released a policy on KiwiSaver. It's not compulsory, it's optional KiwiSaver minimum contributions, and basically rising the default contribution rates by 0.5% until 2032 to 6% and matching it with employers. And when I first looked at it, I like to give the benefit of the doubt, right? But even then, when I looked at it and went, this is a good policy, trying to look at something and go, okay, how is this a bad one? Just, and the more I looked at it and I thought, no, this is a good policy. This is a good policy, and I hope the Labour Party supports it. My only issue is that I think this is just covering over the cracks for their own governmental contributions to KiwiSaver have been cut. So I just think that that's just probably just covering over the cracks. I think the only problem that it could come into is the fact that there might be people that just can't afford it, and that will be an issue. So obviously you will need other policy around having better pay and conditions, pay equity being one of the specific things. Maybe even getting rid of the lowest tax bracket. Honestly, I think I can guarantee you right now, if the national government says, or the Labour government says, we will up default contributions by 0.5%, in turn, we will get rid of the 10.6% tax rate on the first $15,000 that you earn. Including that, we will drop GST by 2%. Or maybe lock the GST tax drop in conjunction with the KiwiSaver default raises. And among other things, of course, you will need to make it the one single policy could blow up in any government's faces, because there will be people that might not be able to afford it. As such, you will need to do other policy, like what I've just used an example. Wages will need to go up. But all in all, I think this is a decent policy. It's just a shame that I think it comes across as shaving over the cracks, or papering over the cracks that they have instituted by cutting government contribution. They need to up that government contribution, probably match, again, maybe not necessarily 6%. They do need to up it. If you like this video, click like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to stay up to date with any new Daily Divide content. And also follow us on Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, and yeah, thanks for watching.